Hello class, Mr. Rivers here. For homework, you should be working the calculator activity that I gave you in class. The sheet looks something like this. I realize there were a number of people in both classes, but especially fourth period, who may have they may need some direction on this. So I thought I would record this video to help you along. I'm going to work numbers 2 and number 3 in the video. So I encourage you to pause as I work through this so you can try it on your own. So for example, if I'm about to find an x-intercept, pause it, see if you can find it on your own, and then kind of use the video to check. Obviously, if you have no clue, then feel free just to watch the video without pausing. And I encourage you to, as always, rewind as needed. All right, so first off, taking a look at number 2 here, we want to graph it using the calculator. To graph using the calculator, it has to be in slope-intercept form, which means the y has to be isolated. So if I isolate that y, I've got to subtract 100x from both sides. So when I do that, I would end up with y equals negative 100x plus 2500. I think most people could get that all right. So I'm going to go to my calculator here. You're on this screen. I'm going to go to the y equals. So y equals, that was negative 100x. Oh, excuse me. Let's try that again. Negative is right here. Negative. Don't use the minus sign for negative. You got to use the negative sign there. 100. The x button is right up here. X. And that is plus 2500. Now, as we look at this, let's think about this graph. What's it going to look like? What is our slope here? Slope is negative 100. What's the y-intercept? The y-intercept is 2500. Okay, so let me go to zoom. The standard zoom is going to give you, I think it's a 10 by 10 window, something like that. I'm going to go to zoom standard, and I'm going to hit enter on zoom standard, and you'll see my graph doesn't really even show up. And the reason being, remember the y-intercept is 2500. The max here is 10. So I've got to adjust my window. I'm going to click on window, and let's go ahead and adjust the x-min and the x-max as well. Let's make the x-min negative 100. We can adjust this again as needed. X-max, let's make that 100. X-scale, this means each tick mark. How much does each tick mark represent? Well, I'm going to have each one be, let's see, I'll do 10. All right, that'll give me 10 tick marks to the right, 10 tick marks to the left of the origin. Y-min, I'll make that negative 1,000. Y-max, I'm going to make that 3,000, because remember, my y-intercept is 2,500. Now, with us covering such a great deal, or such a big distance on the graph, I'm going to have my scale be 500. So each tick mark in the y direction will represent 500. So I'll go now to graph, and hopefully, there, we see our line. Here you see our y-intercept of 2,500. I don't yet know what the x-intercept is, but I will find out what that is in just a second. So we're going to graph or sketch this at the end. I'll tell you how to do that. Remember, each x tick mark represented 10. So that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. You get the idea. Each y tick mark represented 500. So that's 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, and then 3,000 here at the top. So let's go to this sheet. The domain and range. Let's talk about the domain. How far to the right does this graph go? How far in the positive direction? Could I plug in x equals 100? Could I plug in x equals 1,000? Could I plug in x equals 1,000,000? Of course I could. Same thing in the negative direction. I can plug in any negative value I want to. There's no limitations on this graph, so my domain is going to be all real numbers. I'm unable to use the infinity symbol as far as I know, so I'm going to write this in interval notation. On the low end, I'm at negative infinity. Okay, and on the high end, I am at positive infinity. So just pretend those are the infinity symbols. In interval notation, we do need to have these as an open interval because infinity does not have any bounds. Let's go back to the graph. Let's talk about range. How high does this graph go? Well, it goes up and up and up forever. How far down does it go? It goes down and down and down forever. So the range is going to be, same thing, negative infinity, and again, just pretend these are the infinity symbols, and positive infinity. That is my range. All right, up next we got the x-intercept. This is where you probably need some help. Looking at the x-intercept, I'm going to hit second, and then calc, which is right here above trace. So hit second calc, and the second one down here is 0. 0 is another term for x-intercept. It's going to come up later on in algebra. So I'm going to select, I'm going to hit enter here on 0. So hit enter. Now they want a left bound right here. It says left bound. That means I want to be to the left of my x-intercept. So I'm going to move this little blinky thing. I'm currently on the left of my x-intercept, which is right there, and I'll hit enter. I then want a right bound, so I've got to move the little blinky thing, the cursor, to the right of my x-intercept. I'm to the right, so I'm going to hit enter again. We are asked for a guess. I'm not going to actually guess. I'm just going to hit enter. And we are told that our 0 is at x equals 25. X equals 25. So our x-intercept is at x equals 25. Okay. Let's talk about the y-intercept. Y-intercept's up here. We've already talked about the y-intercept. Go back to y equals. This is in slope-intercept form, meaning this is the y-intercept. What's the y-intercept? It's 2,500. So back over here, the y-intercept is at y equals 2,500. In behavior. Now this is new. The in behavior always starts out the same way. As x approaches infinity, y approaches, and then we've got to come up with what y approaches. So let's go back to our graph. So as x moves toward infinity, which is to the right, so as x goes to the right and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, what is y doing? Is it going up or down? It's going down. So as we move to the right, the graph is going down. So as x approaches positive infinity, y approaches negative infinity. Okay, that's part one of the in behavior. Part two is this. As x approaches negative infinity, okay, and again, I would use the infinity symbol if I could there. As x approaches negative infinity, in other words, as the graph moves to the left, are we moving up or down? As we move to the left, the graph is moving up. So as x approaches negative infinity, y approaches positive infinity. Y approaches positive infinity, or you could just say infinity. Okay, so that is in behavior. This phrase is always worded the same way. The only thing we change is y approaches what. So that's what we have to fill in the blank here, and we have to fill in the blank here. But it always starts out as x approaches infinity, y approaches blank, and as x approaches negative infinity, y approaches blank. So it's essentially a fill in the blank question there. G here says give 4 solutions to the equation. So I go back to my graph. I'm going to hit second, and right here where it says table, which is right above graph. So second table, and here we have a table of values, and I've got a number of order pairs. I've got 15 1000, I've got 18 700. I can use any of these. I'm just going to write out 2. You're asked for 4. I'll let you figure out 2 more. But I'm going to use 15 1000 and 18 700. Okay, so that was 15 1000, 15 1000. And the other one was, what did I say, 18, I forgot already, 18 700. So 15 1000 and 18 700. There's really an infinite number of order pairs that you could choose from. Okay, and you're supposed to have 4. I'll go and give you one more. What was our y-intercept? Our y-intercept was 2500. So at the y-intercept, remember x equals 0, so 0, 2500. That is also on the graph. You know, while I'm at it, I've got the x-intercept too. So the x-intercept is 25. And what's the y value with the x-intercept? The y value is always 0 at the x-intercepts. There you go. I got my 4 solutions using the 2 intercepts and using the table feature. All right. What is y when x equals -30? So I'm going to go back to my graph. When x equals -30, I want to find out what y is. You could scroll through the table. That's probably easier right now, but let me show you another way to do this. Graph. Is x equals 30 on this graph right now? Remember, each tick mark in the x direction is 10. So that's 10, 20, 30. X equals 30 is on the graph. I'm going to hit second, calc, value. Value is what I want, which is number 1. So I'm just going to hit enter. Okay, down here at the bottom it says x equals, I'm going to plug in 30. So when x equals 30, what is y? And then I hit enter. When x equals 30, y is -500. -500. So back here, when x equals, what is y when x equals -30? Oh, that's -30. I wanted -30, excuse me. So let's go back. Let's try that again. Second, calc, value, and when x equals negative, which is right here, 30, y equals 5,500. Y equals 5,500. Okay. X equals -30 is on my graph. Even though y equals 5,500 is not, the x value does have to be somewhere on the graph. The x coordinate has to be somewhere on the graph. Okay, so I'll go back here, and that was 5,500. Y equals 5,500 when x equals -30. What about when x is 1/2? Same thing. Go back, second, calc, value, said enter there. That was 1/2, right? Let me double check. 1/2. So I can do 1 divided by 2 for 1/2, enter. When x is 1/2 or 0.5, y is 2,450. 2,450. So y equals 2,450. There you go. Now, I'm not going to actually sketch this graph. I'm going to let you do that. But when you sketch it, I need you to include a couple things. I need you to include how much each tick mark is worth in the x direction. So these were worth 10. So that's 10, 20, 30, 40. You need to show that. So you could just write 20. You could write 40, 60. That would get the job done. Also do the same thing for the y direction. Remember, these were 500 apiece. So that's 500. You could write 1,000. You could leave that one blank. 2,000, 3,000. And then when you go to plot it, plot the intercepts. Plot that intercept there. Plot that intercept there. You've already got those on your sheet. Once you plot the 2 intercepts, which are here, you can connect the dots. Okay, so you need to have the tick marks labeled so we know how much the x scale is and what the y scale is as well. Let's go on to number 3. Number 3, is this already in slope-intercept form? Well, f of x takes the place of what? F of x takes the place of y. Okay. So this is already in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to go back to my graph. I'm going to go to y equals. I'm going to clear that out. And it was 2/3. Now, you don't have to do this for this problem, but it's a good habit to get in. Anytime you're using fractions with this calculator, it helps to put it in parentheses. So 2/3, and then the x button, minus 45/8, minus 45/8, minus parentheses again because we're dealing with a fraction, 45/8. Okay. Now 45/8, that is 5 point something, right? 5 point something, -5 point something is our y-intercept. So remember, we did have a window that went all the way up to 3,000. So that's a bit much. I'm going to go to zoom. I'm going to go down to standard because this is probably a more reasonable window we're dealing with here. But let's see. Zoom standard, then hit enter. Let's see what we got. There we go. So we got a pretty good version of our graph just using zoom standard. Let's talk about domain and range first. Domain and range. What are the possible x values here? I can plug in anything I want to for x. So the domain is going to be all real numbers. Or you can write that in interval notation, negative infinity to positive infinity in interval notation. What about the range? This is going to go up forever in that direction, up, up, up. It's going to go down forever in that direction, down, down, down. So also all real numbers for the range as well. So the domain and range is the same as it was in the previous problem. The x-intercept. All right, here's what you probably need help with. Finding the x-intercept. Second, remember calc right here above trace. What do we click now? We click 0 for the x-intercept, so 0. We want our left bound, so I'm going to get, well, I'm already on the left side of my x-intercept. So I click enter there. That is my left bound. Now I got to go to the right of this. I'm currently to the right of my x-intercept. Hit enter. I don't need to guess. Enter again. 8.4375. 8.4375. Let's go ahead and round that to the nearest hundredth. 8.4375. That's going to be 8.44. 8.44 for the x-intercept. The y-intercept. Okay. Now, what is the value of x at the y-intercept? The value of x is 0 at the y-intercept. So I'm going to go to second, calc, value, which is right there, enter. X equals 0. When x equals 0, y is negative 5.625. Negative 5.625. Negative 5.625. All right, let's talk about in behavior. In behavior. As our graph moves to the right, as x approaches positive infinity, is the graph going up or down? The graph is going up. So as x approaches positive infinity, y is approaching positive infinity. As x approaches infinity, y approaches infinity as well, positive infinity. Now let's talk about in the negative x direction. As x approaches negative infinity, as x moves to the left, does our graph move up or down? Graph moves down. So as y, no, I had it right the first time, excuse me. As x approaches negative infinity, y approaches, it goes down, right? So as x goes to the left, the graph goes down. So as x approaches negative infinity, y approaches negative infinity. Okay. Give 4 solutions to the equation. I'm going to let you do this, but I'll show you how to find them. Second, right above graph, you got table. Here I have a number of ordered pairs, 18, 6.375. You can go through them. You can go up. You can go down. You can look at any ordered pair you want here. So just pick out 4 and you're solid. Here we go. What is f of 250? Now this 250, what does that take the place of? X or y? That 250 takes the place of x. In other words, when x is 250, what is y? So I'm going to go back over here to my graph. Now, on this graph, we only go up to like, what, 10, I think? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We go up to 10. I've got to go up to 250. So watch what happens when I try to find out the value. So second calc, value, hit enter there. X equals 250. Remember, it's not on the graph. Error, because it's not there. I got to widen my window out. I'm going to go up to x equals 300. And I'll do negative 100 just to kind of even it out a little bit. I'm going to change my x scale to, I'll change it to 10, I guess. And let's graph, see what that looks like. Okay. So we wanted x equals, what was it, 250? So second calc, value, x equals 250. So when x equals 250, enter, y equals 161.04 when I round, 161.04. 160, let's do y equals 161.04. And then what is y when x is f of negative 1/3? Same thing, go back to my graph, second, what? Calc. Oh, second, calc, value, when x is negative 1/3, so 1 divided by 3, enter. Oh, why is that not working? Let's go back to Zoom Standard. Zoom Standard, which is number 6. Okay. Oh, I know what I did. I hit the minus sign instead of the negative sign. So let's try that again. Second, calc, value, when x equals negative 1/3. That's a good lesson there. Make sure you're using that negative button instead of the minus button. You will get an error if you use the minus button. I was using my keyboard. So when x is negative 1/3, y is negative 5.8. When we round it, 5.85. 5.85 right there. Okay. All right, hope this video was helpful to you. When you go to graph it, please make sure you include how much each tick mark is worth in the x direction, how much each tick mark is worth in the y direction. Use your scale for that. So window, x min is -10, x max is 10. Each tick mark here is 1. That's what x scale means. -10 for the y min, 10 for the y max. Each y tick mark is 1. That's what y scale means. So make sure you label this. You could go 2, and then 4, and then 6, and then 8, and then 10. You get the idea. You don't have to put a number for every single one, just to get an idea of how much each tick mark is worth. And I would plot the 2 intercepts that you've already found and then connect the dots. All right. Hope this helped you out. Best of luck to you. Can't figure out how to stop the recording. Nope, there it is.